All right, I have 3:09, and we will call this meeting of the Kingman City Commission to order. This is a work session. It will run from 3 o'clock to 4:30. And with that, Mayor Pro Tem, would you lead me?
I'd love to, if my computer doesn't sound off in the middle of my prayer. So will y'all pray with me? To Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for all that you do for us, Father. Thank you for the city and the folks the city represents. Father, thank you for protecting the men and women who are employed here at the city and also our citizens. We're so grateful for that, Father. There are several of our city staff who are mourning the loss of loved ones, and Father, you know who those are. And we just ask that you wrap your loving arms around them during this time. And Father, it's always a difficult time to lose folks, but it's even more tough this time of year. And so, Father, we're mindful of that. And Father, help us to be helpful to those people and just give them the grace and mercy that you are so willing to give. And we're so grateful for that. Father, just be with us during this meeting. All meetings are important, but this one's very taxing to the future of our city. And Father, we just pray that you would just be right in the middle of this with us and help us when we mess it up. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Dan, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. This is a work session, and Joe and John, I think you're probably leading it. Address our COs first. So.
You want to do COs first, Mr. Wright? I mean, we can let Mr. Burns talk about the long-term financial policy. I think Mr. Burns is good at our.
You know, I would like to defer that to one of these two gentlemen here today. Unless I've got that little AI feature like in that commercial that gives you the synopsis of that, I'm not much help.
Let's start with the COs.
Thank you.
Pull that. I printed everything off for you guys. Mr. Wright, will you just go over each one real quick?
Over the
Yeah. Just
Over this?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
that you put together?
It's nothing new.
That you were gonna do?
Okay, fine.
No. Totally unprepared.
Steve feels your pain.
Okay, so you remember we came to you several months ago, and we were discussing, trying to remember when, June. When did we start talking about Phantom Creek and the agreements and all of that?
That'd have been summer.
Okay, so summertime, maybe June 24th. So all those agreements have been made, and that's the bulk of all of this. The lift station to service that new development, water connections associated with that, purchase of water rights. There's a couple of parts to that. So that's the majority of it. Also in this is the need to have a little bit more to provide for the oversizing of the sewer in Meyer Park. We initially set aside funding for the majority of getting infrastructure out to Meyer Park through our CIP funds, but we also needed to do this for future planning associated with Meyer Park. And if I'm not mistaken, Joe, that's kind of coordinated with Phantom.
Yeah, it's the oversizing is in Unit 1A. Is that how we're calling it, Lucas, or 1? Yeah, 1A. It's oversizing that sewer line going through Unit 1A, and that will tie into the $5 million project up there. So we, by law, are mandated to pay 100% of oversizing costs.
So that's included in there, and then other development that's not associated with those two, the lumberyard sewer extension. We had committed to water, if you recall, we thought initially they were going to do septic system. That turned out not to be the case, and so now they're putting in sewer extension, and we're splitting that cost with the owners. So our part of that will be $225,000. Also development related is easement purchases for future water tower. Our easement purchase needed for our redundant line that goes under I-27. All of that to serve future development. And then we've built in some contingencies just for unexpected increases if the bids come in higher than what the estimates have been. So we've got about 200 or 200,000 plus for water and 200,000 plus for sewer built in this. That's all development out of the 10 million. 2.5 million is to fund the 4th Street ground storage tank. To take you back, we've been talking about this for decades, I think, but we had it designated as a project that we were gonna pay for using our COVID reaction ARPA funds from the federal government that we got several years ago. We had that list put together, and that was one of the items on that list. Then the opportunity came up to purchase 1401 4th Avenue, and so we bought that using that part of the money that was identified for that. So now we've still got that situation there that needs to be replaced and soon. So we're proposing that we go ahead and use this opportunity of financing and issuing these certificates of obligation to provide for that, so we can get that done.
Gretchen, will you go to the first slide?
So the total of all that is gonna be 10 million plus 200,000 for the cost of issuance for the debt. So that's where the net proceeds of 10,200,000 is coming from. 75% of that is for development and future growth. About 25% of that is for the replacement of the 4th Street ground storage tank, which is current infrastructure.
I'll go through each project, give everybody an update on what's going on, and then Mr. Wright will talk about the debt service here in a second. Spring Canyon Lift Station number 8 and the gravity and force mains project, what we've been talking about, it's about $5 million. That includes the lift station and associated lines. The lift station is around $1 million, I think, on its own, that we built in the draw. This project has multiple layers to it. We have worked with N&B. They're building the very southern part of it that's in Myra Park. To take you back even further, we were oversizing sewer capacity in Myra Park to provide capacity for Section 4. And then this development came online. And so we were already oversizing that. That's where that 135 came in. So that was the oversizing of Unit 1A. Fast forward, we've made these negotiations. We decided to use this oversizing line for Spring Canyon urbanization as well as Phantom Creek coming in. So that line ends in the middle of their subdivision of what we're oversizing. We have entered into an agreement with N&B Homes to finish out going towards FM 2590. Their on-site contractor is Turkey Creek. That's the same contractor that we use to do the water line to the lumberyard. And that contractor is also doing the sewer line to the lumberyard. They are doing a lot of TxDOT drainage right now, so they're doing quite a bit of work. But they're the contractor that N&B is using to put in all their on-site water and sewer facilities for Myra Park. They, Robbie and Tommy have agreed that they will build that portion within their neighborhood. There's several good benefits to that. I made a deal with Robbie on reducing some of his on-site costs, increasing our costs a little bit. Like I said earlier, we have to pay for 100% of oversizing. And so we are doing some lines in advance of where their development is, because we can also bring on their corner commercial lot. So we have a specific breakdown on that sheet that we came up with that shows what everybody's participation is on each line. There's a place where they have 100%, there's a place where they have 50-50, and so that is very detailed on how that will work. But they will construct all of that, and then we will pay them back for that. They have even agreed to do the boring across FM 2590 onto the newly acquired easement that we got from the Barnes. So we have acquired an easement on the east side of 2590. Our staff has worked on that for a while. That easement has signed, executed, I believe, trucked and filed. Is that correct? We've got a temporary construction easement and a permanent utility easement on that. So Robbie and his team will do their own contract with Turkey Creek. We obviously are inspecting that, so they'll do all that work, and so it'll be a little cheaper having them do it. And then they'll bore over onto the Barnes property. The rest of the project will be bid out by our city engineer. That will go all the way from the lift station down FM 2590 to the Barnes property in the very south corner. Obviously a very detailed deal and project, so we're all eyes on that. Is there any questions on that? We are ready to bid that out, correct, Chris? I think we're ready.
Probably shortly after the first year.
Yeah, we're thinking January, so that's our status. So I know Adolfo and his team did get some extra soil conditions out there. I don't know, I assume those came back okay. So we got soil conditions because that's gonna go on the side of the draw. We wanted to make sure we had more information to the contractors that's bid out, so they know exactly what's under the ground. And I know, we pay a little extra to get that done, but in order to build that out and have an idea that we're not gonna hit rock or groundwater, I think it was beneficial to go ahead and do those geotechnical conditions. So I know that's completed. He and Mike Copeland got that done, and I think we're idling, ready to bid that out. I'll remind you, we started all of that design work way before we had a deal inked with the developer. So obviously that was some risk we had at that time, but also it has helped speed things up. So once we do go ahead and bid this out, which we should go ahead and do that in January, because we won't pay any of those constructions for a while. So these funds become available, Mr. Wright, in February or March? In March.
Probably March to April.
So March to April, so that's when funds become available. We still feel good, because it'll take 30 to 45 days just to bid it out, and we start in January. But that's the current plan on all that. Like Mr. Wright said, we have signed it, I have signed and inked all those deals that the commissioner approved. That happened, 2 weeks ago, Lucas?
Yes, 2 weeks ago.
About 2 weeks ago, almost. Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
so all those are executed.
Sequencing on that is critical, because we're doing lots of different pieces of it, and it'll all come together in the end.
Will. We expect 18, 24 months for this project,
Yeah, I would say
construction.
about 18.
Yeah. You have anything to add to that project at all?
I don't think so.
You go next slide. This is the water connections and water rights. One of the deals with the developer was to sell the water rights to us. That's the $252,000. That will allow for 3 well sites. It went really well having them lay out those well sites. We're pretty good at where they're going to put those. They just need to make sure they give us enough room to do our jobs on those and have lines getting out. The $300,000 that will connect our water main that's running down FM 2590 to Phantom Creek. That will be that 300 will be held for a bit. Talking to the developer, they're going to develop Unit 4 of Spring Canyon next before they start on Phantom Creek. So the $300,000 in there will probably be in holding for several years. Chris took this picture today that you have there. So they are knee deep in it, unintended. And so we expect our 50% to be around the $225,000 mark. As a reminder, we do have a 380 agreement with the owners of Lumberyard. There is a chance it could be under 225. There is a little bit, but I believe that contract is about $282,000. Our contract with them is to pay 50% of engineering and 50% of construction. And we will pay that at the very end of the project. Underway, I think they've hit some groundwater in accordance with what Chris has told us.
Actually, meet here shortly to discuss some options for that.
So Joe Shane designed that for them, and then our staff at High Plains is inspecting it. So we're working on that together. But they have hit some groundwater.
What's the projection completion date for that? How much longer?
What do you think, you guys?
I don't know, the groundwater's really slowed down. I don't have a good feel for that yet. They're having to essentially re-engineer where the manholes are going because of the groundwater. The contractor was attempting to put some crushed rock in there, but we don't think that's sufficient. So our engineer and their engineer are meeting here shortly.
Right, I think actually right now, or in the
Yeah.
next few
Yeah,
minutes.
next few months.
So, but it is under construction nonetheless, so. Next one. So this is the project, as you guys know, we are being required to move our current line that runs from Kim Road to the North Water Tower. That project is approximately 800 to 900,000 to do. We are going to be reimbursed by TxDOT for that part of it. We did ask our engineer to bid out a redundant line to go within the right-of-way. That's the number that we received a bid from, and we thought it was too good to pass up, as we mentioned to y'all. We don't think we'll ever get a better number than that. That contract is awarded to Scott Wampler, and right now we're waiting to acquire an easement in order to begin construction. That contract with Wampler has been signed and executed. We're just waiting on the easement. I think that's a really good deal. In addition to Kim Road and future water line, we are looking at potential property access for Kim Road property at the $550,000 mark. That would be some land acquisition, potentially some easement acquisition to access Kim Road on the very north side. So we've put that funding in there. Due to those legal discussions, I prefer not to say any more on that matter. Next one. This is one that's been on the list for a long time. Mr. Wright just mentioned it. We moved our ARPA funds to buy the building, and so we were going to put this $2.5 million in to redo this ground storage tank. That one is engineer design completed. We are just waiting to conduct bidding and funding. So it is shovel ready.
And that one's all good on existing property then?
Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, it'd be great to have it where we talked about, but yes, it can work on existing property. Mr. Wright, will you mention 2013 roll-off and debt and all that?
Yes. This is all in those long-range planning, but we have current COs outstanding. If you recall, 2012 series issued several years ago for buying water rights. That, along with what was left in the 2013 series, both of those were refinanced in 2021. The 2013 series portion of that will pay off in 2026.
If you'll pull this, I know we're not on long-term policy, but it is on here. This handout you got, it's this page right here. It's got yellow on it.
It's like third from the back. Third from the
Yeah,
back.
second or third from the back, yes, sir.
Debt service?
Yellow.
It's a yellow page, says projected debt service cost.
So we're budgeting for the payoff of that 2013 series actually in this fiscal year that we're in right now. So that's gonna free up a little over $500,000 a year in debt service.
Does everybody see what he's talking about, the 1.14 million right up there?
1.14 is includes the payoff, and then it'll drop down to 637,000. And that will just be servicing what's left of the 2012 series out to the end of that term.
So it falls off here.
No, it falls, so right there, we're paying that off and it falls down to that. So we're freeing some debt capacity. I think that final payment's in February.
I'm hesitant to say that all of that is available to service this debt because we did factor that in the numbers that are in our long-range water plan that we used for adjusting those water rates. And of course, that's all taken into consideration with estimates of the CIP projects that we're gonna do. That can be available, that what we're gonna gain with that to help service this debt. So with that, I'll speak to what is it gonna cost to service this debt. So $10,200,000 for principal. Jason Hughes with Hilltop Securities has run amortization schedules for us. We've done a 20-year term on this. The average payment on that will be a little over $801,000 per year. If we just took and averaged that based on our current number of utility accounts, that would cost each account holder about $147 a year. Just if we just did a 100% increase to cover the cost of servicing this debt. As I mentioned, we do have some savings that will come from this payoff of this debt and the 2013 series. But we also, in addition to these projects, we also have multiple other CIP projects that are on the drawing board that have been ranked, and we've tentatively put those on our long-range planning as things that we need to get done over the next 10 years. So there's more than just this $800,000 a year, and Bo will be speaking to that more in his long-range planning. I think we had 1.6 million.
Yes, 1.68 million in the next 5 years, average annually, that we were planning on using for capital projects, utility capital projects.
Which is not sustainable.
That is correct.
So
Well, at some point, we've got to drill some wells and all too. I mean, that's been a big one on mine. I'd really like to see some additional wells on mine already, just to spread out our water usage. So, you know, that's definitely a piece. So
Yeah.
we've got to fit in there somehow. So,
No shortage of the needs. As to the cost of just this issuance, it's $801,000 a year. So we'll need to be prepared for that. We have implemented, we started on that. We implemented an increase October 1 of this current fiscal year, increasing the sewer rate. And I mentioned that in my memo on this agenda item when taken into consideration during the regular meeting. But we did a 5% increase on residential accounts and about a 6% increase on commercial education accounts combined to help provide for some increase to go toward this debt issuance, debt service. And then we do have a little bit built in already to our structured long-range water rate increase that we implemented 2 years ago. There's, as I mentioned in the memo, there'll likely be some other increases necessary to get to this and be able to keep moving on those other CIP projects. And what you'll take into consideration during the regular agenda item today is just the notice of intent. And so that starts the clock running for us to be able to actually do the issuance and have the proceeds come in March. We have to do the notice of intent and do the publication and let the public know that we're doing this and give them a chance to respond.
Any other questions on the certificates of obligation? If not, we can move on to the next thing. So, you want to go to the GOs next, or you want to do the long-term finance plan? I think long-term would be,
That's fine.
we can end on GOs. You ready?
What this long-term financial plan is really just to get us, make sure we're looking forward and preparing for any obstacles that we know of or can recognize, and that we're addressing them now instead of being surprised when they pop up. So the goal is that we're always looking forward. This is not a completed project. This is the first start of a plan that we've been working on. There are still more items that we need to go deeper into. So it's something that we're going to be growing as we go along. Looking at just this first page, we're looking at just the three major funds: general fund, utility fund, and golf fund. And we'll go into deeper in some of these, but you can see the top portion there. You've got projected revenue for each of the funds. I included the 2025 CO there in this fiscal year. And then sale of Kim Road property potentially in the next 10 years, about 3.5 million. And we'll see later on where those monies will be spent. Just below that, we're looking at operating expenses. So in the blue is just for operating. We got it split by personnel, supply, and contract labor costs. The supply and contract labor costs are increased by the expected number of homes each year, and then increased by a 3% interest rate on top of that annually. So very simple calculation for those two expense types, one that we may want to go further deeper into identifying specific costs within those line items. But we go into more detail on personnel later. Same with utility fund there in the orange. Both of those, you can see there's a cost per home calculation that goes along with that. I'll go over that variable here in just a little bit. And the red is the golf fund, where they are actually calculated on a cost per round basis rather than on homes. We get total for the operating. Under that, we have projected capital. Any identified needs of capital purchases not from the capital equipment fund that we can identify that's coming from operations, and then CIP projects there under that. On the next page, we see debt requirements from the operating funds, transfers to other funds. I did not include the transfers in between the funds and these projections because eventually they would net each other in and out. And if I'm making one change in a projection in one fund, I have to go back and change the projected amount of transfers going back and forth. It would just be a headache to make sure that was kept up with. So knowing that those numbers are going to be netting at the end, those transfers were not projected. Then we see the first black row there showing cash surplus or loss after those expenses. And then the next section after that, we're looking at cash contributions to reserve. So this is our plan to restore our reserve balance for the general fund and the utility fund over the next 10 years. These would be the amounts that would be included in the budget for that purpose. So that last black row there, you can see the net cash really loss every year projected, including those contributions to reserves, and then a cumulative, thank you. The year after year, how much that loss would grow with those projections. I will say, and I mentioned this in that email, our first draft of the budget is usually $2 to $4 million loss. So this really fits within the pattern of what our first draft budget looks like before we go in and identify specific costs where we can go through and reduce or cut. Next page, looking at variables that are used in this calculations. Population and estimated population per household, that's coming from the U.S. Census Bureau. Single-family residential home properties of 4,382, that is coming from PRAD. And estimated annual rate of inflation, right now the projections we're using 3%. For development, this comes from Lucas and his projections, I believe last updated in February. So it's been a while since these have been updated, but they're what we're using right now. The historic new home each year, that's coming from our certified values from Pratt. And then rounds played for golf, you can see the historic amounts each year. And we plan on a conservative 29,000 rounds per year. That's a very hard variable to predict because it's so impacted by weather patterns. We don't necessarily know what the weather's gonna be like next year, what demand there's gonna be for people to play golf. So 29, even though it's below our average rounds played per year historically, it's a conservative amount that we use just in case something happened weather-wise where we couldn't have as many rounds as we have had previously. And then cap activities, these are the numbers that we use for attendance or season passes sold when looking at projecting our cap revenue. Next page, looking at just general fund revenue. I'm sorry, no, just general fund revenue and expenses. It's very much the same information that was just on that first page, but now we're looking at just the general fund. You still see that 2 to 4 range there, that loss that we saw on the first page. A lot of that is coming here from the general fund. Next page, we look at just the revenue. Let's see, sales tax, we use calculations looking at the growth, historic growth with inflation and without inflation, calculate those numbers, make a conservative prediction on what we think that's going to be going moving forward. So those are the two main variables we look at: growth in sales and changes in inflation rates annually. Payments in lieu of taxes, that is our Gold Star agreement. As you can see, the last payment is,
Lone Star.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Gold Star.
Too many stars.
Lone Star Dairy Products.
I'm seeing stars. Fiscal year 28-29, you see that last payment there of 108.8. Then that property then becomes,
Well, will you go ahead, you and Mr. Wright, address what's gonna happen at that point in time?
here we go ahead. Okay,
So when Lone Star's pilot agreement is over and they move to the tax rules. So remember, nobody's heard any of that but the three of us, so start from the baseline.
so that new property coming on is considered new property. So it is not included in the calculation of our no new revenue tax rate. Because of that, we do receive a large benefit, increase in property tax revenue when that property comes onto the tax roll.
In short, the tax law as modified lets us benefit from that agreement coming to maturity. We don't get penalized for that.
Does that make sense, City Commission, for what he's saying?
When the pilot agreement terminates.
Right, correct. It's considered new development, not existing.
Because the whole property tax code has been revised since that agreement was originated several years ago. Yes.
On vote.
But when we're looking at a potential increase in the tax rate, whether that's the Section 75, which I always use in our calculation, or more than likely at that point, we will be using the de minimis tax rate, which is a $500,000 increase on top of the no new revenue. That new property is included in calculating that $500,000. So we do get the benefit of the new property coming on when we calculate the no new revenue, but if we are going to increase the tax rate that year, it will limit how far up we can increase that tax rate.
I'm trying to remember the percentage. Was it 60 some odd percent, 67? The math that I did, rough math, once we bring them on?
Of the increase in revenue?
The new development increase. Remember that percentage base, because in our notice, we put increase, and then of that amount increase, it's percentage on new development. I can't remember what that percentage
I
was.
cannot remember what it was either.
Ultimately, we'll be leaving, what, 50,000 on the table, I think?
Yes.
So we will lose out on about 50. The goal's always been to acquire that when it comes on the tax rolls, to get it to where everybody else at. We won't be able to get all of it. We'll leave 50,000 on the table unless we go to an election, and nobody wants to do that.
So can we go ahead and take the full value? They'll be taxed on the full value of their property, but it just causes us to have to lower our overall rate.
Yes.
There's still benefit to
Your
all the
property tax
general
roll goes
taxpayers.
up, so then you're, as a state, yeah.
That's correct.
Yes. Yes. Does that make sense, sir?
Right. So general overall taxpayers benefit, but we just don't benefit from the tax rate.
You won't get all of
Yeah,
it.
it'll stay the same.
Yeah, because we're maxed at that window.
You can see there, between fiscal year 28-29 and 29-30, it's just under $1 million increase in that year on the ad valorem tax line item there in that line 14. Oh, you don't have those. About the middle of the schedule.
And we'll look at more detail of the property tax projections here in a minute also. You see the franchise fee projections there based off of revenue per household. CAP revenue, we'll go into more detail of that as well. That's based off of attendance numbers. And then other general fund revenue is just based off of an average per household historic numbers. And as you can see there, the transfers from utility, that's not a projected number, as I mentioned earlier. So if you look at the totals, you do see a decrease in the totals, but that large decrease from 24-25 to 25-26 is because we are not projecting revenue from transfers from the utility fund. Next page is showing how we are projecting those property tax revenue amounts. I'm using the format from the Truth in Taxation worksheet from the Texas Comptroller. So if you see in parentheses line 18E, that directly refers to the line on that Truth in Taxation worksheet. So if you want to go back and look at historically how that's calculated, that's where I am drawing it from. So 25-26, we're looking at, I'm projecting an 8.5% increase in taxable value. After that, decreasing to 7% annually. That is the state average, or was the 10-year state average as of 2020. So I'm continuing with those numbers. Canyon's 10-year average is really about 8, but the past few years we have seen a bubble in those values. So I'm not projecting as high as that 8. I am conservatively going to 7. Fiscal year 29-30, you see that 11.1% increase. That is when Lone Star is added. Year after that, 6.7. The increase I'm not applying to the Lone Star property, so I'm going conservative there, and I'm going back to the 7% annually after that. Changes from that value to the total taxable value, that line 21, that's where we're including things that are adjustments that PRAD deals with, appeals. We don't know that amount. We don't know what that's going to be. But you can see there's kind of a pattern historically where it's been between 7.5%, 7.9%. It's been fairly consistent, so I'm using that average percentage moving forward.
Senior tax freeze, that stuff.
Correct. Well, that's going to actually come in the next line 25, the adjusted taxable value. we don't know what those exemptions amounts are gonna be, those freeze amounts. So that's where that calculation comes in there. Prior tax year tax levy, I'm carrying over a number from the prior year projections and moving that forward. And then that's where you see the no new revenue projected rate going across there. There's an adjustment to the actual prior year M&O levy. So then that's where we calculate the projected no new revenue M&O rate. Sales tax adjustment, this is where my projections change every month, because as we receive our monthly collections, I add that to our projection numbers as well. Very much a living document in that sense. So that's very contingent on how much our sales tax collections are. Those numbers give us the voter approval M&O rate, estimated next year sales tax revenue. I use those same projections that I mentioned earlier. Unused increment rate, we have not had that. That's if we happen to adopt a rate below the voter approval rate, we have 3 years, we could make up that difference. And so we have 3 potential M&O rates that are calculated there. The sales tax adjusted voter approval tax rate, that section 75 tax rate, which is an 8% increase, or that de minimis. And if you look to the right, the highlighted in blue figures are the highest possible rate that we could adopt without either being petitioned for an election or automatically triggering election. And right now, my projections actually show the year before the Lone Star agreement ends, that is where the de minimis rate would be our highest rate that we could adopt. For the next 3 years, we could still go up to that section 75 rate, but now my projections show in 4 years, we will be limited by that de minimis rate.
That's 28, 29, is that right?
28, 29, yes, sir. So my property tax revenue projections are based off of that highest potential tax rate, that highlighted tax rate out of those 3 calculations. So the first solid black line, you can see property tax M&O revenue projected amounts. Then the box below that, the increase, annual increase there, and also the percentage of increase. As Joe mentioned, in fiscal year 29-30, when the Lone Star comes on, you see that $956,000 increase. And then it drops back down to 7.13. You can see that percentage of increase decreases after that as we are limited by that de minimis $500,000. That $500,000 is a lower percentage year after year.
So that's just the M&O and the INS, are we calculating it in?
Yes. Yes, that's really got just general fund right now. Once we get into the debt service fund, we'll see that as well. We'll also see the tiers fund M&O revenue coming in as well. Before we move on to the cap, any other questions about property tax projections? And if I need to stop so we have time to discuss COs, let me know. I could talk about this all day.
Oh, please do.
What's that?
Please do.
What I heard was Mr. Burns is on the edge of his seat because he is so into this.
Hey, we're on the cap now. This is
That's
good.
right.
This is good stuff. This is interesting.
Should I pull the button and dump him out of his chair?
Oh, gosh.
All right, jumping into cap revenue, you can see the projected variables I mentioned earlier at the top, total attendance, total season pass sales, and the projected numbers that we're seeing there. Convenience fees based off of the percentage that we're charging right now. So that is just based off of what those attendance numbers are expected to be.
This last year, we passed the convenience fee on credit cards back to the customer this last year. Did not change the rate.
We'll be coming forward with that. So,
We've held at $8 for,
6 and 8, we dropped to the 6, you know, and we've had the 6 and the 8 really since the beginning. 17.
this last year, obviously you guys, 52,000 people through the cap, so I think we're
52,000 guests, it was great.
pretty happy.
I'm gonna highlight one line that John just mentioned. If you look under cap admissions in the italics, you can see average admission price, $6 Monday through Thursday, $8 Friday through Sunday. I took the days open, that came to an average of 6.86 for average attendance. Very rough calculation there, but moving forward. If you look at 25-26, that increases to $7.86. That's we're increasing to $7 weekday, $9 weekend. And then in fiscal year 30-31, another $1 increase there. So in the next 10 years, 2 increases on cap admission prices. Cap season passes, again, I had to take an average. We have several different price range, whether they're using the Black Friday sale price, single pass, family single pass. So I have an average amount that I'm using there. Let's see, my increase in fiscal year 29-30, there's an increase in the season pass price there. I made sure there's 3 areas of revenue I'm looking at increasing revenue for the fees: cap admissions, season pass prices, and concession sales. I made sure that we didn't do more than one of those in 1 year. I want to make sure that we weren't putting too much of demand on people that are attending, that those are spread out for that purpose. Cap lessons, we just kept that at an average there for the past few years. Concessions, you can see in fiscal year 27-28, there's a fee increase there. And then the last year in 33-34, a projected increase in concession prices there as well. Right now, projections don't include cap parties. That could certainly change. But we did have the cabanas also. Comes to about an average of 27 cents per attendance, so we use that average moving forward. See how the total progresses through there. I did some rough calculations. Total revenue per attendance, 25-26 starts at $12. In 10 years, it'll end about $14. If I go to those revenue sources that are really directed to just attendees, so admission, concessions, convenient fees, and cabana rentals. 25-26 starts at 11, and in 33-34 ends at 13. So we look into general fund expenses, starting with personnel costs. That first line, full-time wages, we're increasing 3% every year. A small increase for part-time and seasonal wages. Insurance costs increasing at 8% every year. Those were the largest ones that had included annual increases. But when we're looking at position changes, we looked at the general fund and the utility fund as a whole, and we made sure we didn't add more than 3 positions each year. That was our own self-imposed goal, to make sure we weren't putting too much of demand on the budget increase each year. So they do include in those projections, in the current budget, we only included 6 months of 3 firefighters. We wanted to make sure that next year we included the other 6 months, so a full year of those firefighters being there. We have the JAG police officer that's being paid for by grant, but over the next several years, we will be taking on another 20% each year of that cost, so we want to make sure that that's included in our projections. And we had 5 years of position pay adjustments for the police department, year one being in 24-25. And so 5 years after that, those adjustments are included there as well. New positions, we are looking at SRO officer in 25-26. Part in 26-27, we are looking.
There's 2 SROs on that one.
Okay,
Typo.
yes, thank you. Yes, the city's portion of that not covered by Canyon ISD. And then we have 26-27, the park maintenance position and a deputy city secretary. This deputy city secretary is projected to be taking on eventually the city secretary position. So we are planning on that in advance. In 27-28, current city secretary retires.
Cue the music.
That deputy secretary becomes city secretary. That position is not filled. That position then becomes an HR-related position.
At a lesser rate.
Yes.
We expect deputy city secretary somewhere in the 70 to 80,000 pay range. And then they'll be able to shadow Gresham for a year and then move into that role. Once they've moved into that role, that position will convert into an HR position under Hector.
It's actually very hard for me to think about.
27-28 new positions, fire marshal, 1 police officer, and a solid waste position. 28-29 new positions, we have a firefighter and a city's manager receptionist. As far as the fire department and the police department go, I made sure that we're alternating 1 new position each year for each department. So we have a new police officer in 27-28, new firefighter in 28-29, new police officer in 29, and going forward with that same pattern. 29-30 also includes a new solid waste CDL driver. 30-31, that new firefighter position and a building maintenance position. 31-32, just the police officer that year. 32-33, firefighter and risk management manager position. And then finally, 33-34, a police officer and a street maintenance position.
These are all hypotheticals, looking at the rest of the projections. I came up with a significant amount of these.
And then just below there, just a ratio of number of single residence homes, say per firefighter or police officer. You can see what that ratio would be over the next 10 years. This is really an idea that we got from talking to City of Amarillo, how they use their projections with their population projections or their calls for service. If it reaches this threshold, they know they need to hire a new police officer. If they hire this many police officers, they know that they need to purchase another vehicle. If they reach this threshold, they know they need to start planning on another station. So we haven't quite set those thresholds yet, but we are starting to measure so that we can recognize what our thresholds are going to be.
That's a terrific new thing, Bo, because you're giving us, we have something to look at. When we say we need someone,
Yes.
we know what that means, and we know what those numbers, when Steve or Dennis say they need somebody, we have something to compare that to. It's not just an arbitrarily, I need a guy.
That's correct.
And I think it helps us tell our story to our citizens also, as far as especially with in fire safety and the police department. It helps us tell that story as we move forward with other things and other decisions that we need additional people and they need additional facilities and those type things.
That's right.
So thank you for doing that.
I really like that too. That's how we operate as well, with always the exception that there's extenuating circumstances that could possibly affect that.
Absolutely. Next page, looking at general fund projected capital costs. You can see there with the police department, our equipment, leases, about every 5 years and a projected increase for those every year. A lot of these are using historic averages with inflation adjustments every year. Another big one that we see going down to fire department, that firefighting equipment, SCBA equipment. We just purchased several, but as we hire new firefighters, we need to make sure that we're providing them equipment. But also in year 30, 31, we are expecting to need to replace the ones that we just purchased, about 40 units, totaling about $415,000. So we are already looking in advance of that upcoming need. Same with the radios there as well, potential replacement of their radios in 29-30. We're looking at the street department. Their largest one is our projected seal coating amounts every year. For years 25, 26 through 30, 31, those are based off of a long-term plan for street maintenance. It's maybe 2 years old now. So we're updating or reassessing our need on that and whether or not those costs are still accurate. So there's still potential change there as well. And that second to last line where it says other general fund capital outlay to be determined. I looked at the average expected cost and compared it to the expected revenue. Got a percentage there, and those last 4 years, the projections came below that standard average. So moving forward, I put a placeholder in there. We may not have identified, but if spending is going to continue the same rate that it has been, that amount would likely be needed. All right, moving on to water and sewer fund. You can see the surplus in cash projected each year there. If you're looking at 24, 25, a projected loss of $197,837 for this year. That is the interest-only payment for the CO that was not included in this year's budget. So it would have been balanced, but this is something that's come up since we adopted the budget that I have included in the projections. So looking at the revenue, bulk water, and just the bulk water and the water receipts for the next 4 years, those amounts come directly from our utility rate study from NuGen. I'm just including those numbers there. After that, I'm taking average per household amount and carrying that forward with our projected number of houses. Sewer receipts, I conducted a analysis of our sewer consumptions for the past, I think it was 10 years. We looked over that when we were setting our sewer rates for the 24-25 year, and I'm moving those projections moving forward from what was included in that as well. So that was a projection done internally. And then everything else in the utility fund based off of a per house hold amount and moving that forward. Projected personnel costs, that top section is calculated the same way that was calculated for the general fund. 4 years of new positions, 26, 27, GIS analysis for mapping. 28, 29, a wastewater position. The year after that, a water utility position. And then in 31, an asset manager position and a utility building customer service position added there. And you can see that same ratio of number of positions per number of homes. I included that calculation as well.
Well, all those positions track back to the other spreadsheet that had the 10-year plan for adding positions.
Those first ones were for general fund. But we still did make sure that there weren't more than 3 positions in both the general fund and the utility fund added each year.
Okay, so you do cross-reference those or whatever you want to say,
Correct.
compare. Okay.
If you, for example, year 31, 32 is the asset manager position and the utility billing manager position. In the general fund, that's the year that we were only adding the one police officer position. So we kept the 3 that year.
Thank you.
Capital costs, there aren't a lot of capital purchases from the utility fund. A lot of their purchases are from the capital equipment fund. Capital equipment fund is one that is not included in our current projections. That is a weak point right now that we want to add moving forward. Making sure that we're identifying what pieces of equipment will be purchased from the capital equipment fund over the next 10 years. In the golf fund projections, these are based off of the number of rounds. This is, again, the same numbers that we saw from the first page, but looking at just the golf fund, the cash loss each year, ranging from next year 464 to, 464 to year after that 1.2 million.
They're humoring it being, the operating expenses being in red.
In red, yeah,
Golf
my
course.
color coding.
Golf course is always in the red.
Looking at the next page for the revenue, you can see golf course, capital fee, all the different kind of fees of where those revenues are divided. Things like alcohol sales, I did an average revenue per round coming in. Somewhere around $5.12 to $5.11 per round is spent for alcohol sales. Same with range fees. Let's see, where am I range? Range fees, averaging about 72 cents per round to 71 cents per round. We're just carrying that forward with the projected number of rounds. The box below that, the big red box, isn't related to operating. I just wanted to point out the CIP-related fee that we are collecting going directly to the irrigation debt. So our projected revenue each year, it's kind of a strange way that I had to calculate this, because again, we may charge right now starting next month, $11 per round for the CIP fund, but we have those members that have the annual pass. It's not based off of a per round amount. So roughly 76% of the rounds played pay a $11 fee. So in my projections, I'm actually using $8.40. The actual fee charged per round is $11. That's how I came up with that revenue number, while making an adjustment for those that don't pay that fee per round.
Because you put that 840 times the number of rounds, total number of rounds, right?
That is correct. Next year, we have planned an increase to $12, another $1 increase. I'm projecting the final amount if we,
January.
yes, starting January 1st.
Next month.
No, next month we're going to 11.
We're going to 11, okay.
It's a year after.
So,
Okay, so you're at.
January of 26 will go up to 12. And right now, I'm showing the last increase would be January 27, needing to go somewhere around $13.4. Now, that is based off of 29,000 rounds per year, and that's, right now, is 76% of the people paying that fee. That is very conservative. I don't necessarily think that we'll have to go all the way up to 13.4. I'm thinking maybe closer to around $13. And the timing of whether that be better to do it all at once in 26 or break it up into 2 years. Because it's been some years since we've added an increase to our fees to use for operations also. So the more that we're increasing for this CIP for the debt service, the longer that we're pushing out to meet the needs of our growing operating demand. So we are taking that into consideration. Personnel costs, no new positions for the golf course projected in the next 10 years, just growth and increased costs.
Jumped over to CIP funding and you got
Yes.
half.
Could I suggest that the golf be green next year, please?
It's always been red.
Just wrap this up.
Yeah. Why don't we stop? Let's go ahead and, you wanna,
I'm thinking,
you wanna go over just,
let's just go ahead and wrap this up in
Okay.
here and we'll address the facilities in.
we'll go with that. I wanna make sure everybody gets a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Another 10 minutes.
So 10 minutes, Bo.
All right, CIP is the biggest one. It's the purple page. General fund CIP, starting off first there. Projects that we wanted to make sure were included, the projected sidewalk projects, the downtown engineering design, master drainage plan, which is still hanging out there, stormwater improvements at 11th Avenue and 28th Street. Really, all these projects that we've been talking about and looking to include in the next 4 to 5 years, with the CO coming on and taking a lot of that available cash for those projects, I'm having to delay, especially when we look at utilities, but somewhat here also in the general fund. All these projects that are listed right now were originally planned in the next 5 years. I am pushing them out to the next 10 years. And then the general fund CIP projects to be determined, very similar to what I mentioned with the capital equipment. I'm trying to keep the annual average of our revenue devoted to CIP projects the same. We may not have a project identified yet, but I want to set aside this amount for a project as needed, looking 8 to 10 years out. And then you also see $1 million of the sale of the Kim Road property being used for a undetermined downtown CIP project. Looking at utility fund, I've identified all the CO projects there. That's what you see in the big purple box. Everything else is not included in that and will need to come from utility fund operations. Again, all the projects that we had currently scheduled for the next 5 years, I could not fit within the next 10 years with what I'm projecting for our current cash demand. So I went off of CIP scores, put the highest rated projects, and looked at the timing for those. You'll see a lot of pre-funding for a project. So if you look at reconstruction of the force main at Lift Station 1, that's a $1.45 million project, but I'm only showing we're going to have about $500,000 in cash available each year. So we're pre-funding that for 2 years. Then in 2930, we have the remaining $450,000. That's when we could start on that project.
Those were all based on that scoring that we all did. The commission went through that too, and we all scored that.
That is correct, and we are currently beginning the process of rescoring those projects once again.
Because as part of the CIP plan, that's the goal, is we have to look at those again and make sure those still are priorities, right?
That's right. Whenever regulations change, sometimes funding sources that weren't available last year are available this year. That changes the scores. Timing with other projects, for example, the I-27 project, anything we wanted to do on I-27, the demand and the score for that project skyrocketed because we had to time it with TxDOT's project.
Which wasn't on our radar.
That's correct. So you see the CIP projects for the next 3 years. I'm keeping it at $975,000. That is, if I take the amount from the utility rate study that they set aside for CIP projects and the amount that we set aside for CIP projects in this year's sewer rate increase, and I subtract the amount that we need for the debt service for the CO, about $975,000 is how much cash I have left. And so that's where that number came from. Then moving forward, 2930 after that, you can see the percentage is 9.4 of the budgeted utility fund revenue. I kept the projections at that 9.4%. And second page, our golf fund projects, I have $700,000 for the cart barn. I don't necessarily know that I have identified cash to pay for that. It's just, the need is high there, and I don't want it to fall off our radar, so that's why it's included there now.
So, throwing out water wells, am I seeing bringing on any water wells in these projections
Spring Canyon Well 39 is the only one in the next 10 years.
in the next 10 years?
Correct.
I don't think it gets us there, so.
Yeah, with available cash that
I
we're
know we're
projecting
fixing
available.
to study some of that, and do a water study, but yeah, I don't think that gets us there. Yeah. With our growth. Declining, water tables. It gets us there. And we can debate a lot of this later, so.
I think we all agree with you, Gary. I'll speak up. We all agree with you, and I think it was part of that, 10 million to begin with, Joe. It's just the thing, as that 10 million filled up, we couldn't hold on to it. Is that correct? Is that correct? I mean, that's just where we went. But staff totally agree with you. We know we need it.
There's two sides of that. There's the need for water, but there's also the timing of as they're building. Because it gets more and more expensive to try to do these after they've gone and put streets and built houses and.
Do what? I'm not following you, Joe.
The timing of when they're building houses in these areas.
Right.
And laying streets and putting in infrastructure, that just makes.
You're right, it's gonna get more expensive to drill those wells if we don't drill them on the front end, but I'm thinking we've gotta bring them online even, so.
The best ones to bring online would be the, what's this guy's name up there? Nicholas. What were we thinking, 3, 4, I can't remember, 3 wells? Okay, 3. Probably 3 to 5 million.
I think that's higher priority than Cardboard.
Yes, it is.
Yes. I think so.
It's hard having,
We're trying to get everything on the.
it's hard having
On the
$1
page for
million
discussion.
worth of assets in the cart barn building. Those golf carts are $1 million in assets in a defunct building. Maybe if we could get some inmate labor to help us lay some new bricks, might be another adventure, but the value of the carts greatly exceed that building.
I don't disagree, I just think drinking water is more important than that, so.
Yes, sir.
And we'll be scoring projects again too, so that's where we all weigh in on that.
I'll stop there before digging anything else.
What about,
I was saying we were down to 2 pages, I think.
Obviously,
thank you, yeah,
You do
wow,
the tiers
a lot of
real
work.
quick.
Oh, you need yours?
do the
Appreciate
tiers real
this,
quick.
so.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we missed the tiers,
Last page, looking at tiers fund,
downtown tiers.
we don't have any projected expenses, so we're just looking at revenue growth coming from property tax revenue. Whatever M&O rate we set is applied to the tiers property, so it grows as that property grows, but it is assigned strictly for this fund. You can see next year, there's a portion that comes from Canyon and from Randall County, and so both of those are included in this projection as well.
Looking at the original projections from when we did it, I think it's 3 times the amount that we originally projected.
What we end up with here.
Yes, the first 2 years have been 2.5 to 3 times the amount, Mr. Burns, if I'm
Yeah,
mistaken.
And part of that was because of strategically,
Yeah,
Joe Taco, other businesses coming on.
Allsup's.
Allsup's, Pondaseta, we included Pondaseta, and that
And it's
was,
not on there yet.
that's not on there, but we drew that line in 3 years in advance, right? And that's gonna come on, and so we've got these things coming on, the tire works, those things are
Family
really
Dollar
helping
will
us.
be on there when it's concluded, and Tire Works, the burrito place, so, I mean,
If you looked at our normal growth in that area over the years, it would have been a lot slower than that, but we've had that growth that's really helped us on that. And we'll get there, the idea is to get that to somewhere where it can flow part of a note one day, where maybe you can pay for $1 million, not spend it, not get to $1 million and spend it, but on an annual basis, pay the note of $1 million or $500,000, whatever we could do to help on downtown stuff.
So 10 years, I'm looking at that annual revenue being about $415,000 annually. And then by that 10 years, we'll have a cash balance of over $2 million in that fund.
So we'd start to be able to do something with that.
And that's a 20, I think it's 25 years, correct, Mr. Burns? I think, yeah, tier zone.
Don't lie, I don't know.
I think it's 25 years. So we could get some considerable funds. In my mind, rebuilding the roads in the square is probably top priority and most costly.
But it's doing what it's designed to do.
All right, thank you. Yeah, appreciate, a tremendous amount of work, and yeah, that's great information to plan for the future. So, thank you. Okay, looks like it's 4:24. Why don't we take a break until 4:30 and come back and we'll reconvene. We'll go ahead and close down our work session, and we'll open up our regular meeting here at 4:30.
Yeah, I see. $85. I forgot I got my paycheck split between two accounts. Okay.
You get the 100.
Yeah. Thank you.
She said some do show up. Yeah.
No, it doesn't come out. My bank just pays me early. It's basically a loan that my paycheck pays for.
As soon as I get an inflation. Wayne wanted me to.
Sir, doing good, Chuck.
Good, good.
Is there another way? When did your son?
You doing all right?
He asked if, said if he can get certain information.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
It's like stuff on that.
Those days that you were out of town,
When I take
and
you
submitted payroll.
You know, you did it.
I got paid very early.
If I can get him there.
16, 17, well, 70s or 80s.
I'll be close always.
What about the?
Maybe yesterday or Friday.
That's right, oh no.
Next Wednesday, you're gone?
Because,
So, that's actually the 3rd.
Approval of the minutes of the meeting December 3rd, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve as written. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. And then I don't think we've had anybody sign in public comment. Is that correct?
I do not have anything over here, Gary.
Okay, all right. With that, we are going to delay item number 7. We're going to take some time to go into exec session. And so we're going to have an exec session, and this is actually pursuant to 551.071 consultation with attorney. And with that, I have 4:32, and we'll go ahead and retire into exec session for a few minutes, and we will be back out before she leaves.
I'm gonna stick around. Did you know this was gonna happen? You didn't talk to us.
Oh, yeah. Gotta make people
I
angry.
forgot to put all this stuff in ChatGPT and ask for a 2-paragraph summary. I'll remind him next time.
There is no summary. That was the summary.
Okay, so
Chris is pretty upset.
Jim Rogan.
He didn't realize you were killing all this COP.
Probably more than 10 years before they get started.
I didn't realize you were killing
on the KN,
What do you need?
5 mile issue.
Sorry.
And if we don't have a station within 5
Yes,
miles,
you did.
they will be a 10 by some.
No. Oh, no.
Even within the city limits, with a water supply.
Yeah, it was 4:33 now. Hi, Fred.
They don't care about us.
The biggest thing for this is showing,
Well, I know it's,
we have a need that we're not even meeting now, and it's not even
Exactly, okay.
meeting all of our needs. This is not saying this is what we
the
need.
plan, okay.
This is not the plan, this is, can't even afford what we want to do now.
Because Station 2 alone comes with 12 full-time employees.
No, it's called working for the city of
Section
Kenyon. I feel
4,
like I'm
whatever.
scattered, like everywhere.
Been doing that.
Like, just your pool, and all different
Yeah.
functions.
I feel good, I would have forgot that.
No, don't even.
There's days I
mention that.
just, like, what are, like,
Section
some,
4.
like, have you
So you
seen
say,
that
depending on how the roads are laid out,
whole thing about?
streets, I mean, that's the problem with all these
Come out still employed.
Every day's a good day.
So
That's a
far.
good day. Yeah.
All right, we'll reconvene into our regular session. And with that, I want to double check back on item number 6. Gretchen, you weren't here, but we didn't believe we had any public comments from entities. Okay, thank you. All right, item number 7, consider and take appropriate action on ordinance number 1218, an ordinance of the City of Kenyon, Texas, removing real property from the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Kenyon on petition of landowners and reducing the ETJ of the City of Kenyon in accordance with such action and providing for an effective date.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna reopen my agenda here. So on November 5th, we received a petition for relief from the ETJ pursuant to section 42-102 of the local government code. We've been through this a few times now, so you're all familiar with that bill that was introduced last year, SB 2038, that now allows property owners in the ETJ to remove themselves from that ETJ, provided they meet specific requirements. We did receive all of the required documents in order to meet those terms and conditions. It's one lot, the property owner and the entity that owns that property has submitted all the required documents. We will just remind you that we have added some clarity and effectiveness by suggesting that an ordinance be adopted because this SB 2038 is still in litigation over whether or not property owners should have the ability to remove themselves or if it's the express authority of the city commission to do so. There's some conflicting language there in chapter 42 of local government code. So we recommend that you adopt ordinance 1218, which would remove that property from the ETJ. At this point, removal of that property, the only benefit to that property owner would be that our sign regulations do not take effect.
Discussion, motion.
I move we approve.
Second.
Have a motion second to approve ordinance number 1218. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, item number 8. Consider all matters incident and related to approving and authorizing publication and posting of notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation and take appropriate action on resolution number 33-2024, resolution of the City of Kenyon, City Commission pertaining thereto. John?
So this is the action item associated with the COs that we discussed during the work session. Just to hit the highlights again, this is to adopt a resolution to issue a notice of intent to issue certificates of obligation. The total amount of the principal is $10,200,000. So provide the financing for those development-related projects, and then also the 4th Street ground storage water tank. This will be a 20-year term and an average annual debt service of $801,000. And this would provide for the timing for the commission to act at its regularly scheduled meeting in February 18th, to actually take action necessary to pass an ordinance to authorize the issuance of these certificates of obligation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 33-2024. Is there any further discussion?
Joel, is that when Hilltop comes? Is that when Jason would come in February?
Not unless we ask him to.
Commissioners, this big expenditure, I think we have talked about it, extensively, not just tonight's meeting, but in the past and all too. But it is a big decision. It's putting a lot of weight on growth. We're asking our current residents to step up and at $147 each, most of that's for future growth. Not everything, but a lot of that's future growth. So I think we're a believer in that. I think that's our city is in a great place because we are growing, but this is a piece of it. Anyway, it's a big decision and big decision we're making for our residents. So.
With you, Gary, I do think it's a big decision. It is a large number, but it's also projects that we've just been discussing and we feel like have been very important about moving forward. So.
All right. With that, all in favor of the motion, signify by raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 9, consider and take appropriate action on discussion on public safety facility improvements and bond election. John?
Well, I included a lengthy memo in your packet. I won't go through that. That is simply kind of summarizing everything that we've gone through. I did go back to discussing back in 2014 when we started looking at facilities. The first time and how we did that, and then I moved all the way through our current study that we've looked at. I included information related to our last work session when John Gamble came and provided us with the information and walked you all through all the projects. Joel and Bo have provided information related to the effect to taxpayers at various levels. You all had asked for various levels of that bond amount, and so they have that, and they're prepared to speak to that. So I think at this time, I think it's, staff has a recommendation here, but it's just time for you all to have that discussion related to the bonds. And Joe? I didn't mention this other thing I added to everybody. At your seats, you have an emergency service facilities bond project. It's a spreadsheet that goes through and talks about each one of the projects that we're talking about doing. It gives you the breakdown. It shows you that the police department is 33% of that of a $15 million bond. The fire department is 65%. And then there is 2% that would be used specifically here in City Hall in the current police department for the preparation for planning and development, and also down the road for Public Works to move into that. I did include an asterisk there that states that we feel like we've still got the animal shelter in there, and that falls under the police department, under public safety. I did not include that in the grand total. We feel like that through our contingencies and through cost savings, we feel like we'll be able to find that within this bond without adding it to the bond. So that would be staff's recommendation, and I turn it over to Joe.
One of the things, I had a long call with our local USDA representative. I was trying to figure out what type of red tape we'll be dealing with on the USDA side of things. And so I've learned some things. I still got a bunch of questions, but we probably have more in the USDA allocation than we probably were supposed to get. And so just to remind everybody, in the FY25 appropriations bill for the federal government, our projects are sitting in those. That budget has not been passed. If you've been following the news, they were debating on passing it before Trump gets into office or after. Here's they're probably going to wait. So that's what they're looking at. So those are in there. There's 2 projects. There's a $1.4 million project, which exceeds the 35% that I mentioned to y'all. I expected that to be at 35%. It's at double that. And so that would include the safety facility, the Lindsay fire safety facility, training facility, and the burn house. And that was around 2 to 2.1 million in my original estimates that I got working with the Hamiltons. And then it also has a separate item for the engine, and I included the engine at 1.1 million. And that item is separated out of that 1.4 is at 385,000. So the questions that we're asking ourselves, is the USDA agency going to change that dynamic once that money is funded or not, or is that money free and clear, which is more than what we were entitled to. And talking to our USDA person, he did say that Ronnie Jackson is one of the few congressmen that are doing these public projects like this. He said there's not very many of them that do that, and I don't know if that's given our application some credence in there. I'm hopeful, but that is huge. So obviously, I can't guarantee that's going to go through, but that would be a big help if we were able to get both of those. We do intend to try for the FY26, so just as you said, they haven't even passed FY25. I expect it to be passed between now and May. So it is the federal government we're talking about. And then at that point, the FY26 will come open a little bit after that. And we would submit the rest of the projects. Everything is eligible under this program. Everything that we're talking about is eligible under this Rural Community Facilities Program. One thing he did mention to me that I was unaware of, they do have a loan program through that, USDA. Their interest rates are considerably less than what it's being quoting to us. I don't know if we can legally do the bond election and do a note through USDA. I don't know how the legalities work on that. He indicated to me on the phone that the interest rate was approximately 3.8%. The way that USDA does it, they don't issue it, they go out and buy the notes and then you do the loan through them. I don't know if we can legally do that via bond election, but that would be a significant savings. I don't think it affects our decisions tonight. However, I would like to continue looking into that as well as y'all's already authorized me to continue moving forward on the grant side of things. But I'm going to ask some more questions. Mr. Wright and Mr. Boyer will be involved with me in those discussions. And I've talked to Chuck on a little bit on the legality side. We're still looking through some of that. I don't know if you can do it that way or not. It's just the way the water develops.
Is there a possibility then, Joe, we just have to tweak what we're doing tonight to say, okay, the funding of this, we're still going to have to.
We're going to have an election no matter what.
Voters anyway,
Yes.
because it's paid for by taxes.
Yes.
But we might have to tweak what our language of tonight, or is that what you're thinking as far as to get
If
there?
it does work, Hilltop would be removed from the situation. There would be no issuance fee, there wouldn't be any of that, does it still stand? Or, one of the things we've been looking at is the legality behind having a very sliver of City Hall being involved in this. Does that stand with the bond council and their opinion from the Attorney General on that? And so we may be out some of those costs. There's just a lot of questions still out there that Mr. Wright and I have discussed just briefly, and we'll continue to look at. It may not work. I'm not sure. I cannot guarantee. However, that 3.8 interest rate is sure nice to look at. So I don't know. But they do direct loans under this same program in supplemental grants. The way a lot of these programs have worked in the past is typically if we had a $15 million project, we might be eligible for 15% grant of that, and that would be just loan forgiveness. That's how a lot of them have worked. I don't know if this is the same way. We are still asking questions, but I did want to update y'all on that discussion. I did send them the stuff that they'd asked me to. I have not heard back from them, and we'll hopefully hear more in the opinion. I don't think it changes anything. We'll have to have an election no matter what.
I'm really not comfortable at the $15 million level. I think for two reasons. I think we are asking a lot of our current residents and our taxpayers. And I really believe that what we're wanting to do can be done really well at a level less than 15 million. And one thing I'm sitting looking at is this chart that we were looking at last meeting. And you know, I think last minute we got the fourth edition in there. Well, that fourth firm came in $3 million higher. So that just really skews our average big time. If you take that out of the mix, we still got three locally very strong firms. We don't know exactly who they are. But that averages 13 million. And so I'm sitting thinking, okay, my Gary Hender's math, okay, that really includes the projects, except it doesn't include the fire engine, so we've got to add $1 million to it. It doesn't include the animal shelter, plugging in 400,000 there. But you know, it sounds like to me, the USDA grant is actually, you know, in the legislation for the coming year. That's $1,785,000. So that net number actually reduces the amount by $385,000. So then gives it to where it's much stronger, where 13 million would be good. But then on top of that, we have over $1 million of contingency built into these numbers too. So, okay, so the bids do come in some higher. We've got $1 million in there. You know, then worst case, if that doesn't play out, yeah, we might have to cut a project, or the roof is in there. You know, that might have to be delayed, might have to be paid for somewhere else. But with the $1 million contingency and then that additional, I just really think, plus I think there'll be things as we go in and we fine tune it a little bit. If we don't do as much on the exterior of Gold Star, I think we're looking at, you know, what we can do to, you know, for that homeowner's budget to keep it down as much as we can, and yet, you know, take care of. I think we can do every single thing that we want to, you know, based on these other bids and all, plus the contingency in there. I just don't think we need to go to 15 million. You know, if we wanted to cut, I think we could cut it. I think you could get it back down to a $10 to $12 million range. But I think 13 gives us plenty of room to do everything we need to do. So
So if you do 13, where are you finding the $2 million?
It's based off of these three. If you look at
Just off
these
the
three,
first three averages?
yeah, those first three averages is right at 13 million. I think it'd be 13
That's,
million.
but that's you removing the fire truck and,
No. So that is without the fire truck, but then if you add the fire truck in, you add the animal shelter in, but these bids don't take in that USDA funding. So we're just fairly certain that's in, you know, the appropriations bid. We get that. That actually takes us 385,000 to the good. I don't know.
yeah, I know what you're saying.
So I think that gives us all kinds of room to do, and probably more what we were talking about to the project. John, you've kind of been spearheading this. Where am I missing that? I mean, if you include that fourth bid in there, then yeah.
It's a Western
I get it,
Builders.
but-
We all know Western
Yeah,
Builders.
it's Western Builders, and they're gonna.
always more expensive.
And we were told that by John, that they're a little higher, and that they always come in, they're not gonna go over. Because they're gonna come in either under or at that price. I mean, we all have a lot of faith in, again, we're just talking about someone's opinion. It's not a bid, it's not a quote, it's not any of that. I think the only thing, Gary, is personally, I still have that concern about the federal money. I know it's in the bill. I'll state it, we've been over awarded.
Yeah.
So at what point are we held accountable for that?
That's the question we just
We don't know. I mean, will Elon Musk catch us on that and come and say that we're over awarded? I don't know. You know? That's the concern, is trying to count on the is just trying to count on that. I hear exactly where you're coming from. I just, you heard what their needs are, and I think they've supplied those needs.
But need-wise, that's being taken care of. That's not the issue.
I hope
The
so.
issue is,
I hope so.
the issue is really that fourth bid that's 3 million, yeah, not a little higher. I mean, that's out of the ballpark. So,
right.
you know, looks like to me, these others are all three coming in kind of right the same range. So
Right.
I would think somebody in the ballpark's gonna be.
And that's the tradition. I mean, and traditionally, I think they got what they expected. I think this is how they look all the time. When these firms do these OPCs, I bet they come in. Depends on how your estimator is he a conservative estimator? Is he a non-conservative estimator? Those kind of things. But no, I hear what you're saying, Gary. I mean, I hear you. So, I'm, 14 million is a great number. I appreciate you throwing that number out.
I'm comfortable moving it forward. I really think it could be less than 13. I think we can do some things in there, change up what they're thinking they're doing on the exterior. Okay, we'll look at the doors on the, fire. There's a couple of those things I think we can look at in the project and all too. So, I think we could come in, I think we could bid it, 12 if we really, tried to look at a couple of those things like that. So, plus the contingency in there.
We'll have a day where everybody on the commission comes out and helps us build some walls.
I'm not above that.
There you go. I will. Thank you, Gary, for your opinion.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Paul, builder in the mix.
The projects are all fine. I think it's what the taxpayers will approve. And I appreciate y'all letting the taxpayers decide this. But I think anything over 10, if they're gonna approve it, they'll approve 15. If it's under 10, I don't even know if they'll approve it, but if they do, I don't, anywhere from 10 to 15, and 15's fine. Because if they approve it, it's fine. You'll have the money to do whatever you wanna do down the road. But I don't know if it's, so the question to me is, what will they approve?
What do you think?
Well, I don't think they will, but I'm an old conservative fella, so I don't know. But, that's just me, but I don't have a clue. So, to me, just a question between 12, 13, 14, and 15, it doesn't make any difference, just keep it 15. See what
Staff agrees with you. I'll share a conversation that we've had. And that is, we feel like, exactly what you're saying, Paul, that a number is a number, and that our citizens will either support a number, whatever that number is, or they won't support a number, whatever that number is. Because these numbers are so close, between from $15 to $20, $5 a month, they're so close that we're all just guessing on what people will do. But the thought is that either I'm supporting it or I'm not supporting it. And where that number falls, I think, is what you were saying, Paul, is almost irrelevant.
We've
Because
already approved 10 million, if they gotta pay for it and do another 15, if they go in for all that, that's amazing. I mean, I think you got.
I would agree with
You have
you.
a huge support of your community if they'll vote for all that. It'd be great.
But we really don't have anything allocated for that extra 2 million. I'm just seeing that we can get the project done for 13, with over $1 million in contingency to help us get it done. Then why would we put that extra, on top of them? I mean, it's still the homeowner and okay, so it is just $36 a year. But why are we asking them to do that if we can get it done at the $13 million level? And I think there's plenty of room for moving around at that.
Make a comment. You're not really factoring in the cost of the roof. So just be sure you've got that in your number. because
Joe,
we don't-
I think this last
The last one.
iteration did.
Oh, did it?
The last
think
one
so,
did,
next
yes.
Last one had
My
it in
last
there.
one did.
I didn't think it did. I apologize.
It's not detailed on here, but
The
Just
total
always to
for
be-
Gold Star was higher in that last iteration. It went up
it does
by
include the roof.
And they cut,
Um,
went down some.
a little
in other
over
areas.
500,000 is what's in that last iteration.
I don't want us to lowball it and then starting the project and we don't have money, we don't have reserves to do anything else. So if something happens with the roof and we gotta replace the roof, that's not coming out of reserves because we don't have reserves available to do that.
Right.
So if we don't get it with the debt proceeds, it won't get done. And so my fear is that we end up with something that the elevator doesn't go to the basement, and for 50 years, we're asking, well, why did they do that? And we haven't done something that's significant and major that affects the next 50 years that we could have taken care of if we had just done another $1 million in debt issuance.
I hear you, Joe, but it's in that number, and we've got over $1 million contingency too. Surely we can manage, and we're doing it construction manager at risk is what I'm kind of hearing. Surely we can get somebody that, okay, you're not touching that $500,000 for the roof, you know?
I just want to be certain of that, because that building's useless.
I
if
hear
don't do
you,
the
I
roof
hear
on it.
you, yeah.
I agree with Paul. I mean, I think anything, I don't know what our number specifically should be. I agree about that 15 million is probably to get everything that's been asked for if nothing else comes through. That's what it's gonna cost. If we don't get the money from the feds and if we don't use all of our contingency, because there's about a little over $1 million in contingency sitting there. But I agree with Paul as well. Anything over 10 is kind to a taxpayer's probably gonna, I mean, it's double digits, so they're gonna look at it that way. So just what is that number between 10 and 15 that we feel like is I agree no more than 15, but is 13 enough? I agree, you look at the 3 and you throw out the last one because it is significantly different. I mean, it doesn't, then you are looking at, I mean, if you add everything in and take out the possibility that we don't get federal money, you're still looking at 14.4 if we got no federal money on the average of those 3.
And I'm
You're looking
hearing,
at
I don't think I'm just reading into it, we're pretty confident it's coming because it is in the appropriations bill.
It's in the appropriations bill. I
Yes,
know that
yes,
for a fact.
yes.
And that's sitting there.
We just don't know anybody that's,
I can't-
that's gotten it. We don't know how, we don't know
I
how
have
it
talked to
works.
others.
We
I'm
just don't know a
still-
lot about it.
I know I've asked Mr. Wright to reach out, and so we're trying to find somebody that's done this. And there's not many. Like, this was the only one Jackson submitted. There was only like 5 in Texas on this bill. Tom Ball had a ladder truck in there. And then there's a couple fire departments that I'd never even heard of, some volunteer fire departments. But I know I've made at least one call. I know Mr. Wright and I talked to Jason about that. Haven't heard back from that person that might have experience. I will try to continue to reach out. I mean, it is in the budget, the federal budget. Yes, I can guarantee you it is in there. I don't think they'll pick it out. I don't think they do that, because they've got a whole host of projects, so. I think the confidence level is high, but obviously I'm inexperienced speaking of that.
I'll hear what Danny has to say.
I'm somewhere between the 13 and the 15. I am. I think 15's a lot. I really do. I agree with Gary. I think there's some fluff in there that could be cut out, especially on the exterior of the Gold Star building. And we do need the roof. We've got to have it.
Yeah.
Or the whole thing's not worth doing. But I think if we get that federal money, I think 13 will do it. And, you talk about the fact that, perception is reality. Well, it is, You look at 13,000 versus 15,000, and yeah, probably the average voter would not think that much about it, but our responsibility is to give them the best product we can give them at the best price we can give them. And if we can be conservative and pinch our taxpayers' pennies, I want to do it.
Well, I spent a lot of time with Sims, and John sat with us and helped us, and through that process, you know, even going back to the last meeting that I attended, not the last meeting, but the meeting that I was present at, my fear is still the exact same. And I mean no disrespect to anybody that's in the room that was present, that voted for this, or that allowed this to happen. But when we moved from code enforcement at the police department to the library, it was probably one of the most, looking back now, for sure, looking back. Now, at the time, it wasn't as bad as I think it is today. But looking back today, I think that was probably one of the most disrespectful things we could have done to the police department. That is not a police department. It has never been set up as a police department. It was cutting corners. And I look at these projects, and I have great love for the fire department. But those are so stable, those projects are so stable that we are not cutting that. And if we get into a bind, what's gonna happen is we're gonna do what we've said from the beginning, is we're gonna throw some paint and change the carpet in the Gold Star building. And we're gonna be walking, traipsing victims through a police department where suspects can be and the general public can be, and just officers working, which is what's going on across the way right now. It's just disrespectful. Ultimately, it will eventually, and probably has to some degree, trickle down to the level of service that's provided to the citizen, because it's a recruitment issue. I mean, I can tell you, when you walk into the sheriff's office, you know you're walking into a sheriff's office. When you walk into my office, you know you're in a sheriff's office. When you walk in the police department, you're walking into a library. What they've done, what the fire department's done, what the finance people and the committee have done, they are smart, intelligent people. They know the risk. They know that if they make that too high, that the taxpayer is not gonna be okay with it. They've eliminated what they can eliminate. They've asked for what they need. And they're putting it on the line. They're coming back to us, and I'm assuming everybody's agreeing at that $15 million. And they're risking it. The consequences are great for them. I mean, we talk about the consequences of a little bit of money to the taxpayer. If this fails, based on the fact that they go too high and we agree with the number, it's catastrophic. And they're still, after many meetings, are gonna stick by that number. Sims is in the same boat. They yes, they can make more money if the number's higher, but they also are weighing that risk against the fact that if they make that number too high, the election could be failed based on the numbers too high, that our citizens couldn't stand for it.
That's our decision tonight. I mean, we're the ones to vote, and that's on our head, the five of us, I think. So we've got to decide on, what is too high, so, and what is.
Well, but I mean, at what point, and when you tell me that, we're at 15-4 essentially based on another gamble, right? We're gambling, we're gonna gamble with the federal government, saying that the federal government is gonna maybe do what they kinda have said possibly they'll do with a fire truck. And if we lose that and we go with 13 million and then we were without a fire truck, where are we gonna pull that out of?
We don't have a place to pull that out of.
I mean, we've just sat in a meeting and saw the burden we're putting our taxpayer on in the first bond. And here we sit and we're gonna gamble with that? I mean, I just don't feel comfortable with the consequences of losing that to the federal government. I don't feel comfortable with it. I think we have the opportunity to fulfill the needs of the folks that, It's on their head. I mean, I understand it's our responsibility, but it's on their heads. They presented it. They've been given plenty of opportunity to say, well, you know what, we really could cut here. I've looked over that police department thing 1,000 times and I don't know where you'd cut. Yeah, the exterior maybe, but I think half of the citizens might come back just based on opinion and go, man, you spent all that money and it still doesn't look like a police department? Still looks like a stinking bank? And I think you've got half the citizens that may have that opinion, Gary. I don't, just because we have that preference that we like the way that building looks.
Yeah, we do have to figure out a plan B, on that piece of it. If we miss that, you know, there's million and a half that we've got to, the way I figure it with those bottom three bids, we're 385,000 to the good. So, you know, you're gonna have to be short, $1.4 million or so. But I don't know. I think I'm willing to risk that piece for the taxpayer and think that we've got plenty of other contingency built in.
What is the impact of us overpaying or being overpaid by them?
You mean by the USDA? What would happen is we would just regress. So we would have their money. Let's just talk about the training facility. So we're expecting the training facility to come in about that in the burn house, about 2.1 million. I would take out the 1.4 million, and then whatever that would be our match, and that would come from the bond for that facility. So, which would be 600,000 to 700,000 ish. I think that's right. That would free up funds to do more facility stuff. It's typically how bonds work. We'd spend every money on what's allowable in there. So we would not, if we did have funds left over, we would not put it on the debt service. We would use every dollar for facility improvements related to police and fire.
So does the fact that you feel like it's in the appropriations bill change y'all's recommendations on how much money this bond needs to, this election this week?
I wish I had more to offer on that. I don't know. I really don't. I was surprised to see it at 1.4 because I quoted the engine at 1.1 and 385,000 is exactly 35%. And that's what it came in, but then I saw that 1.4 and I was just like scratching my head, and so not sure. I'm hoping the agency is good with it. That's the only risk I have. Because if not, talking to USDA, when I talked to Clyde about it, he indicated that based on our affluency of our community, our low income levels, we actually probably should have only been at 15%. That's what he told me when he pulled up our numbers when I was on the phone with him yesterday. We shouldn't have, because 35% was based on population, but the other side of it ties into your low moderate income numbers. And that would have put us down the next level of 15%. And so that's what he told me. So at this point, I don't know what's up and what's down. And I have struggled trying to find any of my colleagues that have gone through the similar process. So this process for this fund is the only thing we actually can apply for through USDA. We are too large and ineligible for almost any of the other programs. I know Stephanie and I have had a long talk about that. And so I think the max you can go and be in this program is like 20,000 population. If I had to guess, that's how they built City Hall. Is they used
It was some kind of grant.
It was some kind of grant. If I had to guess, Chuck was probably around then. He helped build it. And so that's how they built City Hall. Sorry, you came in '83, right?
I wrote the check.
Yeah. That's what I guess, Cody. I just don't have any certainties to offer to you guys. I'm sorry on that, but it's in the budget.
because I asked the Jackson staff if I could add this to the FY '25, now that we have the numbers, and they said that's not possible, the budget's done, it's in there, it's basically just in queue, waiting for Congress.
So there's a staff recommendation of $15 million. What is that based on? What is that?
That's based on this sheet.
Excuse me. But that does, I think that 15 million does include that fourth bid.
That's what I'm asking.
And so,
What is the $15 million? Where are you basing that number off of?
Just rounding. This is what we based it on.
numbers.
Literally, I looked at those
Yes,
bids.
yes.
I looked at those bids and rounded.
Yeah, we
to-
rounded,
To try to get where we knew a number.
We think we can have some savings in here to get the animal shelter in there, and that's one of the notes that we put into this sheet.
And we acknowledge it's 19%.
No, it's what, John?
It is 19%. It is 19%. It would be a
Or tax rate.
19%
Tax increase.
tax increase. And you, Bo, Joel, would you talk about the average home, which would be my home?
Yeah, average home, looking at the '24 tax roll, $256,714. Looking at the payments for that, this varies from what was handed out. What was handed out was a projection. I'm looking at current year. Right now, for city taxes, they'd be paying about $1,053. Total taxes, about $4,631. So if you go to the increase on their total taxes for all agencies, 10 million would be a 3% increase, 15 million would be a 5% increase. So somewhere within that range.
But I'm paying 19%, right, more?
For city, yes.
Just the city, that's all.
Just the city.
That's all I'm talking about. Don't pull that other in. Don't pull those people in.
Somebody took it.
They might be uncomfortable. No, but I'm at 19, so I'm under the 20. I'm at 19. That's a quarter more, whatever. Fifth more.
That's right.
20 whatever dollars.
Yeah, you're looking at somewhere $20 monthly.
Okay, and if it went to 14, it goes to
Sorry, if you go to 14, that's about $20 to $19 a month.
okay. It's a couple of dollars a million.
Yes. Monthly.
And a couple of dollars is very significant to some and not as significant to others. I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that fact. That's
You
what the
know, I
numbers
do
come.
also think it would be really good for all of us to be on board. I mean, we've got to go out and sell this to taxpayers and that we're, very comfortable with it,
Sounds like you got to
Is there
come up a
is there a
little bit.
middle ground that,
Sounds like you got some ways to go up then.
sounds like you all are just stuck on 15 million. I'm pretty strong that I think we can do everything we want to do and take care of the police. Just it'll be a Taj Mahal for maybe not a Taj Mahal.
It can't be, we can't do anything on the outside.
It's true. It already is on the outside. So I think it'll be
Dated talk.
everything and more than what we dream of over in the police department at the 13 million. I really believe that if the government funding comes in.
And we'll continue to push that.
What's that?
We're gonna continue, we're gonna submit for more.
Right, we'll keep working.
We'll keep working on it.
I do think it's important that we come out of here and we're all on same page and we're all working to sell this. It's important. I mean, this is hugely important to the future of the city of Canyon. I mean, we've not had a facility improvement like this. We've really never, Joe, I think, sounds like had a bond issue period for, a major building project. So this is something Canyon needs and I agree completely. We've got to figure out how to do it
In our history, we can, and Gretchen and I have had this conversation many, many times, we can only find two bond elections, or one bond election, excuse me. That was the cap. There's never been another bond election. Chuck, are you aware of any other tax elections
They
we've ever
voted on
had?
something on this building, but I don't believe it was a bond election.
No, it was a referendum.
Yes.
It was not a
To
bond
move
election, it was
forward,
just a
that was it.
referendum.
That was the only thing we could find.
could
I
find.
It's
read the
pretty
60s and
incredible that the
70s.
city hasn't had to do that to the point with our facilities. That's pretty remarkable.
And this is your police station for,
I think our staff will be there after I'm dead and gone, and I'm only 20.
and I think this is your central fire station, Vince, for, now I may have a satellite fire station at Buffalo Hill or somewhere else one day, but as far as my central fire station, this is it.
This will be here forever.
Once we put this in there, then it's,
And I thought it was a great idea, building an extra bay out at our train, we'll have 3 bays out there, and I think that will be great for our grass fire fleet, and just helps, This possibility, if we do just do this metal building over here in the slot, that frees up more space in the fire annex building.
And I feel like our taxpayers would rather us do it right instead of cutting corners trying to make it work. I think they would rather us have the money to make sure it's done correct.
Christian, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I'm the one throughout the third bay. I'm not
no, I
Mr.
get that,
Miser
yeah.
here. I agree, and I'd like to see, anyway.
For the record, I'm never gonna forget that comment. I wanna say thank you, I had never thought about that.
What's that?
That Gary likes that building so much because he's a banker and it's a bank. That is gonna live rent free in my head for a while.
Just an observation. Just an observation.
I didn't even think about that.
So Gary,
Sorry, Gary.
if you're not willing to do the 15 million, what is your compromise? What would you think? What would you be willing?
I'm sitting thinking, okay, let's go to 14. That's higher than what I think that's way an extra million above what we need for contingencies and everything else. But
And that puts
where
it,
we come up with a number where, we're all on board.
If I may, if you're at 14, you can assume that if the federal government adjusted our allotment to what it should be, that then you're still covered.
That's what I'm thinking too.
They said you don't get the overage, but you get that 35%. And you'd still be safe.
I mean,
Mr. Mayor, in lieu of time, I make a motion that we authorize city staff to initiate the steps which will result in the issuance of $14 million in general obligation bonds pending taxpayer approval through a May 2025 bond election.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to issue the bonds at the level of 14 million. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Thank you all. I know there's a lot of different thoughts going into this, but I do. I think this is going to be just tremendous facilities for the future for Kenyon, and appreciate all the planning that's gone into it. Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate you jumping in on a lot of those pieces with the planning piece, but also on the Gold Star piece, you and Robin both. But I think we're headed a great direction for the city of Kenyon. One thing too, you go back and that facility study, John, that did what back in 2016
yeah,
or so,
14, yes, sir.
came up with a police station standalone that was 15 to 16 million, and that didn't include the land. So this is something that is a great move for taxpayers, and our citizens long-term. So
Gold Star kind of blew us out of the water, just like I said last week. Us having the opportunity to purchase Gold Star changed everything for us as far as what our facilities needed because of the price of land and ability to get land downtown and be where we needed to be. That enabled us to be where we needed to be. So that, we
for the record on
appreciate
that started with a conversation from Mr. Wright with me 2+ years ago.
So we appreciate that.
So I know we haven't talked about that much, but that's where it all began. I think it will be a tremendous cost savings. In addition, 19,000 square foot to put another business in would have been a challenge. And in addition, you know, one thing we get feedback wise from the center of downtown and the rest of the community, they really like having us in the heart of Canyon. And so I know they really like having us down here. I've heard that on multiple occasions in this locations, you know, because we had talked about moving police department if CISD hadn't gotten Midway. We talked about moving there at one time, you know, and that would have been fairly far. But I think this works out and checks a lot of boxes and meets a lot of needs. And I appreciate the lightheartedness here tonight from the commission and all the efforts. We have thrown a lot at you on the COs and the GOs, and I just appreciate everything you've done. You guys, at the end of the day, are volunteers for this community. I know the community may not remember that. You guys are volunteers, and you're digesting a significant amount of information here to make decisions. This is a 50 to 70 year decision, in my opinion. I think they'll be there for a long time, and I think a lot of needs are going to be met. I think a lot of change is going to be really great. I think it's going to help our recruiting efforts. You know, one of the things that Steve and his administrative staff, we've met once, we're going to hopefully meet again, but just trying to increase retention from the police department has been very important. We're trying to continue to do that. I think the commission took initiative and action to do that by doing 6% raises for that department to help bridge that gap and continue to move that way. I think we've done a lot, and I think this commission should be committed for those efforts and the amount of time they put in to make these major decisions for their community.
And now we have a lot of work to do, and we're gonna need y'all's assistance in talking to people and helping people understand our needs. And our staff knows that, and our staff will be behind that and working diligently now as quickly as we can to be public with everything we can and moving forward with encouraging folks to vote.
You know, and I think part of our message too, because people are gonna wanna know, okay, how much is it gonna raise my taxes? How much is it gonna come out of my budget? But I think part of our message is we're really working to keep your costs down. And let's talk about the insurance that you all are paying and what happens if we don't go down this road and our ISO rating, which we think we can get back to a 2, if it goes to a 6. And I've had conversations with one of my best friends who's an insurance agent. That's going to be a lot tougher to swallow. That's going to cost a lot more money over on the insurance side. So we're really looking out after the pocketbook of our citizens to go here and do this. And I think that needs to be a fundamental part of our message here too. So. Very good. Well, I think that now takes us back again to executive session, back to item 10 to finish that up. And at 6:40, we will adjourn back into executive session. Thank you all. I know on a lot of fronts.